art my darling, thou art my joy, both night and morning.
"One moment," said Toby. "Did you not say, Mr. Biggs, that this fellow was X something or other?" "That I did, for sure." "Then we must give him a proper salute." "Aye, Toby," said Biggs. Then the two of them turned their backs to me, dropped their breeches, and commenced with sounds and gesticulations that I won't bother to describe. The whole corner of the saloon erupted in laughter. Several people began to sing an obscene rendition of "The Minstrel Boy," which I will also not describe, and some cheers went up. As seemed proper to the moment, I rose to my feet and gave them all a true military salute.
Oh, in Amsterdam there lived a maid, mark well what I do say. In Amsterdam there lived a maid, and she was mistress of the whoring trade. Go no more a-roving with you, fair maid.
Just then a soft, mellifluous voice spoke from behind me. "Excuse me, Billy." Nell had quietly entered the room, looking much more presentable and refreshed. Her hair was neatly combed, and she wore a bonnet that matched her dress. She carried with her a parasol and a small purse. Her voice was much softer than I normally expected from a woman of her profession. "I'm sorry to interrupt you and Mr.—" She paused uncertainly. "The young gentleman—" "Good Lord!" Billy boomed out of a false embarrassment. "What has become of my manners?" I rose from my seat while Billy made what were to me typically absurd introductions. "Nell, this is a young relation of mine, Lieutenant Jed Zeron, formerly of the Union Navy." Nell offered a slight curtsy which betrayed for a moment her mud-encrusted shoes. "Jed, this is Miss Nell, Flaherty." She scowled at Billy. Then Billy stumbled as to how to present her station. A friend of mine. Business associate." "Very well." "As I said, Billy, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I must be getting back." "Certainly, my dear. I've got a great deal of work to do in the next few days, and I'm sure that I'll see you soon." There was a short silence. Nell fidgeted. With her left hand, she casually began to twirl the downy auburn ringlets behind her ear, while with her right hand began to drum lightly, if not subtly, on her purse with a slender finger. "I was going to do some errands on the way back." Billy furrowed his thick eyebrows at her inquisitively. "Eh?" he said. "Oh, shopping, of course, of course." He took her hand and began to lead her into the hall. Excuse me for a moment, will you, Jed?"
Oh, it cleared up fine at the break of day, and we set sail once more.
And away we bully boys, we're all bound to go.
The captain began to pace the afterdeck impatiently. After a few moments he walked over to the helmsman. "Keep her on points as long as you can," he said. The helmsman nodded and said nothing. He was a huge man, and he stood at the wheel silently in the dark like a great stone monster. I never knew the helmsman's name, but Jenkins had told me he was from Argentina. He stood close to 7 feet tall. An hour later, another sounding was taken with no result. The Cronus had by this time lost her way, and with no steerage turned broadside to the sea, rocking hard against the waves. Many of the passengers had, by then, gone to sleep. There were many crewmen on deck, but with no wind. They remained idle and quiet. Jenkins, who, like the rest of us, had nothing to do, found some time to speak with me. "You're looking all nervous," I said. "Is the ship in any kind of danger?" "Not as such. At least, if the mastheads stay awake." "Why? What are they looking for?" "Well, now," he said, rubbing his unshaven jaw, "they're looking for the Aucklands." "The Aucklands? What are they?" "The Aucklands are some of the nastiest bits of rock that God ever let stuck up into the sea." He paused for a moment. "If the cap had plotted our course proper, then ought we to be just about smack dab in the middle of them?" Jenkins turned towards the railing and squinted into the darkness. My gaze followed, but since the moon had not yet risen, we could not see very far. Keeping his eyes fixed upon the water, Jenkins said, "You know, my granddaddy was one of the ones who discovered those islands. He was on a whaling ship called the Ocean when they passed through these waters back in 1806. He told me that they first saw them when they were totally covered with fur seals. The beasts were everywhere, thousands and thousands of them. So my granddaddy turned his trade to slaughtering seals. Made a good living at it too. No more seals on them anymore. They killed them all by 1830 or so. Every last mother's son of them." He fell into a thoughtful silence.
I wish I was on Australia's strand.
Heave away,
All away, with a bottle of whiskey in me hand. We're bound
bound for South Australia.
We were all frantic, but there was nothing we could do but watch as the cliff grew higher and higher above us. The captain ordered one last sounding, to no avail. He then ordered all of the longboats to be provisioned. All the while the sound of the waves grew louder. The set of the sea drove us into the rocks. With the surge of a wave, the port side of the Cronus struck the cliff. The jib boom fouled on an outcropping, splintered, and was carried away. Another surge caught the mizzen yardarm and sheared it off. Then part of the rigging collapsed near to where I stood, injuring several of the passengers who crowded the deck. The currents carried us along the barren, precipitous rocks, grinding and smashing the ship with each surge of a wave. About half a mile further along the cliff, the Cronus swung about so that her stern faced the cliff. Our only hope was that the backwash from the waves would push us away from the rock. It was only a brief hope. A wave pushed us back, the rudder fouled on a rock and was carried away. Now there was no hope of ever gaining control of the ship. We prayed then that the island would soon begin to round out and swing us around to the leeward side so that we might drift clear. This hope, too, was immediately dashed. A huge cave opened up in the cliff. When we got near to it, we lost the help of the backwash from the breakers and began to drift in. I didn't know where to go or what to do. The mainmast lodged in a fissure near the entrance of the cavern. The next surge caused us to pry into the rock and dislodge a shower of stones. Everyone was running around the decks trying to avoid being struck by falling debris, but many people were crushed. I saw a monstrous boulder tumble down and completely crush the Patagonian giant who had remained at the helm. Another rock smashed completely through the afterdeck when it fell. The mizzen truck then splintered and collapsed, killing more people. I sat huddled in a corner near the transom, terrified. I was sure that I would soon be dead. The sounds of people screaming, combined with the horrible noise of the topmasts scraping on the low ceiling of the cavern, as well as the booming of the waves which reverberated against the stone walls, was nearly deafening. Then, as the ship became completely enveloped by the cave, the mainmast fouled in another fissure and stuck there. The pressure from another surge forced the mast to press down. Its heel broke and smashed the mast down through the hull. That was the end of the Cronus.